All right, guys, I want to do a segment about knights and how to fight them. There is a lot of talk in the 30K community about banning knight lists, knights are overpowered, all this. I've heard this several times. So I wanted to do a section on demystifying knights and showing you several tactics you can use with just all-comers units to help you defeat these things and why they're not that scary. So this section is going to be called Say Goodnight to Knights. So the first thing you need to know is just know your enemy. So we'll go over some of the rules and how knights interact with the game, and then we'll punch holes in that and exploit the weaknesses of its rules. So first thing, so knights have move through cover. So what move through cover gives you is you automatically pass dangerous terrain checks, and when charging through difficult terrain, you would normally roll 2d6 for your random charge ranks and subtract 2. If you have move through cover, you do not do that. You still charge the 2d6. Also, when just in the movement phase, moving through difficult terrain, normally you roll 2 dice and choose the highest. With move through cover, you roll 3 dice and choose the highest. Knights have an extra ability on top of that where they roll 3 dice, choose the highest, and then double it. But that's all good to know. Now, what move through cover doesn't give you that some people get confused on, when you charge through difficult terrain, it drops you to initiative 1 for the assault phase. The only thing that prevents this is assault grenade or some type of equivalent ability. Move through cover does not do that. So knights charging through difficult terrain are still lowered to initiative 1. This is very important to remember because that makes them go, after dreadnoughts, after other knights, after anything that basically swings at initiative with a, tough, like a more powerful enough close combat weapon to actually hurt these guys. It also, like I said, makes them go simul with melt-a-bombs, so you're going to be able to clamp the maximum number on them before your guys start dying. So that's definitely something you need to keep in mind. The other thing, in this edition of the game, walkers lost the ability to pivot at the waist. Now, I guess the new Knight FAQ may change that. I don't know. For one, the FAQ is not official yet, so it may change later, or it could change in the FAQ. For right now, rules as written in the large hardback rulebook I have here, these guys use all the rules for firing just like a walker. So the way a walker works is in the movement phase, you move it, and then wherever it ends its movement, its guns from that point on have a 45-degree firing arc. So why that's important is you can place, models, like if you're trying, you want to surround it anyway because of its ion shield, which we'll get to in a second, but it also makes it to where if you have a threat over there and a threat over there, he's going to have to point his knight at it to get them in the firing arc, and it's got a very limited fire arc if you spread models around it. So where it can't, even though it's a super heavy and can fire different targets, it's got a very narrow firing arc for a super heavy vehicle. The other thing to keep in mind is this thing's on a huge base. I believe it's 7 or 7.5 inches. It's 6.5 inches wide and 4.25 long, I guess, or whichever way you want to look at it. But it's important to keep in mind that the narrowest it is 4.25 inches. So why that's important, when you move, anytime during movement, unless you're assaulting, you have to stay 1 inch away from all enemy models. So this makes this thing, if you just had one little enemy here, because this thing's base is so big, it sucks up a lot of its movement just trying to move around that. And then because its base is so big, you may be able to put little roadblocks out there to make it move into difficult terrain where it has to roll dice, and it's maybe even going to lose more and more movement. It's also easy to block its charge because its base is so wide. You can put units out in front of it to block its lanes pretty easily, which we'll get into. The other thing is, the way you divide facing on this is basically, through the torso, you draw an X, just like a vehicle. So it's got front, rear, 2 sides, just like a vehicle. A normal tank or anything like that. So it's armor 12 on the sides, 12 on the back, 13 on the front for most knights. I think all of them are armored the same. There may be some knights in the future that come out with different armor on them, but this is very important to note, and we'll get into why that is later. It also has what's called an ion shield. Some of them have an ion shield that also reduces strength, but we'll just stick to just say it has a normal ion shield for now. The way an ion shield works is during the shooting phase of your opponent, you can choose a facing, and just from that one facing, you're going to get a 4-up invul save. So there are ways to manipulate this to where you can lessen the effect of that shield, which we'll talk about. The other thing that's a weakness of Knights is a lot of the Knight chassis shooting isn't that great at killing armor, to be honest. A lot of it's AP3 or higher, so you can't just shoot a vehicle and explode it with most of their shooting attacks. A lot of them struggle to even kill a Rhino at range. So if you can, get your Meltagun guys in Rhinos or mount your guys, these guys are going to have a hard time of getting you out of vehicles and destroying armor at range. They pretty much rely on combat. So if we can use some of the tactics that we talk about later on to slow them down, it's going to limit a lot of their destructive capabilities on, taking models off the board from the enemy. So these tactics that we're going to go over, after I show you these, if you're going to implement them in a game, this is a model, like a lot of people that even use Knights, they don't necessarily really understand the rules or really grasp what's going on. So make sure, if you're going to use any of this stuff that's to follow this, to explain how it works before the game, just to give them a heads up. Just say, hey, this is how this works. I'm going to be using this. Just to make you aware, so when you position your Knight or whatever, keep all this in mind, because positioning is going to be huge on a lot of how these tricks work on how to combat these guys.